everyone, Sarah here. Rewind Justice brings you revenge stories that will blow your mind. If you're ready, hit subscribe and let's go.
The words echoed across the hotel ballroom where 50 members of the Morrison family had gathered for our annual reunion. My sister Victoria stood beside the buffet table, pointing at my wheelchair like it was evidence in a trial. "Seriously, Diane," she continued, emboldened by my parents' approval. "We all know you can walk when you want to. This whole act is getting old." My mother nodded from her chair at the head table. "Your sister works so hard at Riverside Medical Center. You could at least try to be normal for one day." I sat calmly in my wheelchair, hands folded in my lap. The woman beside me, Dr. Patricia Reynolds, carefully set down her champagne glass. "Victoria works at Riverside?" Dr. Reynolds asked me quietly. "Director of Patient Services," I confirmed, my voice equally soft. "She's been there 6 years." Dr. Reynolds's expression shifted into something I recognized from hospital board meetings. "Professional. Calculating. Ew. Interesting," she murmured. My father stood up, gesturing toward me. "Diana's been in that wheelchair for 4 years. 4 years. Plenty of people recover from car accidents. She's just not trying." 17 relatives nodded in agreement. My cousin Jennifer actually clapped. I smiled serenely. "Dr. Reynolds, perhaps now would be a good time to discuss that hospital funding matter?" Dr. Reynolds stood up, all 6 feet of her in a designer suit. She had the kind of presence that made hospital administrators straighten their spines. "I think that's an excellent idea, Diana." She looked directly at my sister. "You're Victoria Morrison, Director of Patient Services at Riverside Medical Center." Victoria's confident smile wavered. "Yes. Do we know each other?" "I'm Dr. Patricia Reynolds," she said simply. "Chief of Surgery at Riverside. And Chair of the Hospital Board." The color drained from Victoria's face. My mother's fork clattered to her plate. My father froze mid-gesture. And I smiled because 4 years of humiliation was about to end. The accident happened on a Tuesday morning 4 years ago. I was 28, driving to my job as a senior healthcare policy analyst for the State Health Commission. A semi-truck driver fell asleep at the wheel and crushed my car against a concrete barrier. I woke up 2 weeks later with a traumatic brain injury, shattered pelvis, and severe damage to my spinal cord at the T12 level. The neurological team gave me the prognosis: partial paralysis, permanent nerve damage, and a lifetime of pain management. I'd walk again with intensive therapy, they said. But I'd never walk normally. Some days would require a wheelchair. Some days would require a cane. Bad days would require bed rest. My career as a healthcare policy analyst seemed over. My sister Victoria's response when she visited the ICU: "Well, at least you'll have more time for family now." That should have been my first warning. I spent 8 months in rehabilitation. Physical therapy, occupational therapy, pain management, psychological counseling. The State Health Commission held my position for 6 months, then regretfully let me go. "We need someone who can travel to field offices," my supervisor explained apologetically. "I'm so sorry, Diana." I understood. But it still hurt. Victoria's response: "See? Everything happens for a reason. You can focus on getting better now." What she meant was, you can stop pretending to be important. My parents agreed. "You pushed yourself too hard, Diana. This is your body telling you to slow down." They wanted me to move back home. To be their poor disabled daughter, who they could parade as evidence of their compassionate parenting. I refused. Instead, I took my insurance settlement, $3.2 million, and did something they never expected. I went back to school. Online graduate programs became my salvation. While Victoria was posting on social media about her promotion to Director of Patient Services, I was completing a PhD in healthcare administration and policy. While my parents were telling relatives I was resting at home, I was publishing research papers on disability accommodation in medical facilities. While my family pitied me, I was building an empire. My dissertation focused on hospital funding structures and their impact on patient outcomes. It was groundbreaking enough that the State Healthcare Funding Authority recruited me before I'd even defended it. "Dr. Morrison," the director said during my interview via video conference, "your research on funding allocation efficiency could save our state millions in healthcare costs." "I'm not a medical doctor," I clarified. I have a PhD in healthcare administration. We know exactly who you are, she smiled. We want your brain, not your medical degree. They offered me $142,000 annually to be Senior Policy Director for Healthcare Funding. I negotiated to $165,000 and the ability to work remotely 4 days a week. I accepted. That was 3 years ago. 3 years of analyzing hospital budgets, allocating state and federal funding, and wielding more power over healthcare institutions than my family could possibly imagine. I also did something else with my settlement money. I invested it with the precision of someone who'd spent years analyzing financial systems. My portfolio grew to $6.8 million. I bought a fully accessible house. I hired a personal care assistant for bad pain days. I consulted for 3 healthcare policy think tanks on top of my state position. And I never told my family any of it. To them, I was Diana who couldn't work anymore. Diana who lived off disability. Diana who showed up to family events in a wheelchair and made everyone uncomfortable. Victoria, meanwhile, rose through Riverside Medical Center's administrative ranks. She made $89,000 annually and thought she was a healthcare titan. She had no idea that I controlled the budget allocation for every state-funded hospital in our region, including Riverside Medical Center's $127 million annual state funding package. Dr. Patricia Reynolds knew, of course. We'd met 2 years ago at a hospital funding conference. She'd approached me after my keynote speech on disability accommodation standards. Dr. Morrison, your work is revolutionary, she'd said. I'm implementing your recommendations at Riverside. We'd become colleagues, then friends. She knew about my family situation, how they dismissed my disability, how Victoria worked at Riverside without knowing her little sister controlled their funding. Let me come to your family reunion, Dr. Reynolds had suggested last month. I want to meet these people who convinced themselves you're unsuccessful. I'd hesitated. Then Victoria had sent a family-wide email. Family reunion at the Grandview Hotel. Everyone must attend. Diana, please try to look presentable. Victoria's colleagues might stop by. That's when I'd replied to Dr. Reynolds. Actually, that's a great idea. The reunion was Victoria's show. She'd organized everything, invited everyone, and made sure the entire family knew how successful she'd become. Director of Patient Services at a major medical center, my Aunt Susan repeated throughout the cocktail hour. Victoria's going places. My mother beamed. We're so proud. She's worked so hard. I sat quietly in my wheelchair, wearing a designer dress that cost more than Victoria's monthly car payment. Dr. Reynolds sat beside me in an equally expensive suit. You're enjoying this, Dr. Reynolds murmured. Not yet, I replied. But I will be. The tension started during dinner. Victoria stood up to give a toast about family, success, and gratitude. She looked directly at me. Some of us face challenges, she said with practiced sympathy. And we should all be grateful for our health and abilities. I see every day at work how lucky we are to be able-bodied. The implication was clear. She was lucky. I was not. Dr. Reynolds's jaw tightened. That's remarkably condescending. Wait for it, I said softly. After dinner, as people mingled, Victoria approached me with several of her colleagues from Riverside. I recognized 2 of them, a nurse manager and a physical therapy coordinator. Diana, these are my co-workers, Victoria said with forced brightness. Everyone, this is my sister. He's between opportunities right now. I'm sure something will come up, the nurse manager said kindly. Diana had a car accident, Victoria explained, lowering her voice conspiratorially. She's been recovering for years. We're all very supportive. Dr. Reynolds stood up slowly. How long have you worked at Riverside, Victoria? 6 years, Victoria said proudly. I started as an administrative assistant and worked my way up to Director of Patient Services. Impressive, Dr. Reynolds said neutrally. And you've never met the Chief of Surgery? Victoria laughed. Dr. Reynolds? No, she's way above my level. Why? Just curious, Dr. Reynolds said. That's when my father decided to escalate. He'd had 3 drinks and was feeling bold. Diana, why don't you try standing up? He announced loudly. Show everyone you're not as helpless as you pretend. The room quieted. My mother nodded enthusiastically. That's a wonderful idea. Diana, you can walk when you need to. We've all seen it. Victoria crossed her arms. Seriously, Dee. The wheelchair is a bit much. You walked to the bathroom at Christmas. With a cane, I said calmly. After taking pain medication. On a good day. Excuses, Victoria said. She turned to her colleagues. This is what I deal with. My sister faking a disability for attention. Dr. Reynolds's expression went arctic. Faking. She can walk, Victoria insisted. She just chooses not to because it gets her sympathy. And disability benefits, my father added. Taxpayer money. I didn't receive disability benefits. I made $165,000 annually. But I let them continue. It's embarrassing, my mother said to the growing crowd. Especially with Victoria doing so well. The contrast is just painful. I suggested. Unnecessary, my mother corrected. This was it. 4 years of building to this moment. I looked at Dr. Reynolds and nodded slightly. She smiled. Cold, professional, devastating. Victoria, Dr. Reynolds said clearly. I need to correct something. I'm not way above your level. I'm your ultimate supervisor. I'm Dr. Patricia Reynolds, Chief of Surgery at Riverside Medical Center and Chair of the Hospital Board. Victoria's face went white. Her colleagues took a step back. My father's drink stopped halfway to his mouth. You're Dr. Reynolds? Victoria stammered. I am, she confirmed. And I'm here as a guest of Dr. Diana Morrison. Dr. Morrison? My mother looked confused. Diana doesn't have a doctorate. Actually, I said calmly, I do. PhD in Healthcare Administration and Policy from State University. I defended my dissertation 3 years ago. The room went completely silent. Victoria shook her head. That's not possible. You've been recovering. You've been at home. I've been working, I corrected. From home. 50 hours a week. I'm the Senior Policy Director for the State Healthcare Funding Authority. I pulled out my phone and showed them my work profile. My title. My credentials. My publication list. Dr. Reynolds added, Diana is one of the most influential healthcare policy experts in the state. Her research on funding allocation is required reading in hospital administration programs. Victoria's nurse manager gasped. You're that Dr. Morrison? You wrote, Efficiency Models in Regional Healthcare Funding? I did, I confirmed. That's mandatory reading for our management training, she said, looking stunned. Victoria found her voice, though it shook. But you're disabled. You can't work. I'm disabled, I agreed. And I work. Those things aren't mutually exclusive, Victoria. Dr. Reynolds's voice cut through the shocked silence. Diana doesn't just work. She controls the state funding allocation for every publicly funded hospital in this region, including Riverside Medical Center. Victoria's face cycled from white to gray. What? Your hospital receives $127 million annually in state funding, I said calmly. I review, approve, and monitor that funding. I've been doing so for 3 years. My father's glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. That's not possible, my mother whispered. I pulled out more documentation. My employment contract. My salary statement showing $165,000 annually. My investment portfolio summary showing $6.8 million in assets. I also consult for 3 healthcare policy organizations, I continued. I've testified before the state legislature twice on healthcare funding reform. I published 4 peer-reviewed articles last year alone. Victoria's physical therapy coordinator was staring at me with something like awe. You developed the disability accommodation standards we just implemented. Those were your recommendations. They were, I confirmed. Dr. Reynolds looked at Victoria with professional disappointment. Your sister has quite literally shaped healthcare policy that affects your entire hospital. And you've spent 4 years telling her she's faking her disability. We didn't know, Victoria said weakly. You didn't ask, I corrected. 4 years, Victoria. 4 years of family gatherings where you could have asked what I was doing. Where I was working. What I'd accomplished. You never said anything, my father protested. I told you I went back to school, I said. You said I was wasting time. I told you I got a policy position. You asked when I'd get a real job. I told you I was working in healthcare funding. You said it sounded boring. I pulled up my text messages and read aloud. Diana, when are you going to accept that your working days are over? That's from you, Mom, 18 months ago. I'd just been promoted to Senior Policy Director. Stop pretending you have a career and focus on getting better. That's from you, Dad, last year. I was keynoting a national healthcare conference. You're embarrassing the family with your Disability Act. That's from you, Victoria, 6 months ago. I was negotiating a $340 million regional healthcare funding package. The silence was deafening. Dr. Reynolds added quietly, Diana is the youngest senior policy director in the state healthcare funding authority's history. At 32, she wields more influence over healthcare in this state than most hospital administrators achieve in entire careers. She looked at my parents. And you've spent 4 years telling her she's faking. My mother's face crumpled. Diana, we didn't. You didn't want to know, I interrupted gently but firmly. Because my success with a disability threatened your narrative that disabled people are broken, helpless, and dependent. Victoria sank into a chair. I've been such an idiot. Yes, I agreed. You have. Her nurse manager looked between us awkwardly. Ms. Morrison, Dr. Morrison, I should mention that Riverside State Funding Review is coming up next month. I'm aware, I said. I'm the one conducting it. Victoria's face went even paler. You're reviewing our hospital? I review all state-funded hospitals annually, I explained. It's part of my job. I evaluate efficiency, patient outcomes, administrative effectiveness, and compliance with state standards. Including disability accommodation standards, Dr. Reynolds added pointedly. Victoria looked like she might be sick. Diana, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Are you sorry you were wrong about me? I asked. Or sorry that I have power over your hospital's funding? She flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? I challenged. Would you have called me a faker if you'd known I controlled your hospital's budget? Would you have demanded I stand up and prove I'm disabled if you'd known I could cut your funding? The answer was written on her face. My father tried to salvage the situation. Diana, sweetheart, we've been wrong. But we're family. Surely you're not going to let this affect Victoria's hospital. Dr. Reynolds laughed, sharp and cold. Mr. Morrison, are you seriously asking Diana to compromise her professional ethics because you're embarrassed? That's not what I meant, he backpedaled. That's exactly what you meant, I said. You want me to prove I'm family by not holding you accountable for 4 years of medical gaslighting. I stood up slowly from my wheelchair. The room gasped. I could stand. On good days with pain medication for short periods. This was not a good day, but I wanted them to see. I walked 3 steps toward Victoria. Each step sent lightning through my spine. I stopped, gripping my wheelchair for support. You see this? I asked Victoria. This is me walking. 3 steps before my nerve pain becomes unbearable. On a good day I can make it across a room. On bad days I can't get out of bed. That's what faking looks like to you. Tears streamed down Victoria's face. I didn't understand. You didn't try to understand, I corrected. I lowered myself back into my wheelchair, my hands shaking from the effort and pain. Dr. Reynolds touched my shoulder supportively. Diana's disability is documented by 7 neurologists, confirmed by multiple MRIs and nerve conduction studies, and recognized by the state medical board. Suggesting she's faking isn't just insulting. It's medically ignorant. She looked at Victoria's colleagues. I hope Riverside's patient services director understands that disability accommodation isn't optional. It's legally mandated. And morally essential. The physical therapy coordinator nodded quickly. Absolutely, Dr. Reynolds. We take accommodation very seriously. Do you? Dr. Reynolds asked pointedly. Because your director just accused someone of faking a documented spinal cord injury. In front of witnesses. Including her supervisor. Victoria looked like she wanted to disappear. The reunion ended shortly after. Most relatives left quickly, embarrassed by the scene. My Aunt Susan approached me quietly. Diana, I'm sorry. We all assumed. We should have asked. Yes, I agreed. You should have. Dr. Reynolds and I left together. In her car she turned to me. How do you feel? Vindicated, I said. And exhausted. The pain. Considerable, I admitted. Standing was stupid. Effective though, she observed. You made your point. Did I? I asked. Or did I just prove I'm petty? You proved you're human, she said. They've spent 4 years dismissing your disability and your achievements. You earned the right to set the record straight. My phone buzzed continuously. Texts from Victoria, my mother, various relatives. Victoria, please call me. I'm so sorry. Mom, Diana, we need to talk. We didn't understand. Dad, your mother is very upset. Can we meet this week? I turned off my phone. The next morning, Victoria appeared at my house. I almost didn't answer the door. Please, she said through the intercom. 5 minutes. I let her in. She stared at my home office. 3 monitors, adaptive workstation, walls covered with certificates and published papers. This is where you work? She asked quietly. 50 hours a week, I confirmed. She sank onto my couch. I've been the worst sister in the world. Yes, I agreed. You have. I convinced myself you were lazy because it was easier than admitting I didn't understand your disability, she said. And because. She trailed off. Because what? Because I was jealous, she admitted. You were always the smart one. The accomplished one. When you got hurt, part of me thought, finally, something I'm better at. The honesty was startling. That's incredibly messed up, Victoria. I know, she said, tears streaming. I know. And I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't erase 4 years of humiliation, I said. I know that too, she nodded. But I want to do better. Really better. Not just because you control my hospital's funding, though I won't lie, that terrifies me, but because you're my sister and I've been cruel. You have, I confirmed. What do I do? She asked. How do I fix this? I pulled out a pamphlet. Dr. Reynolds runs a family education program on disability support. 6 weeks. Learn what you should have learned 4 years ago. She took it with shaking hands. Will you give me another chance after? That depends on whether you actually change, I said. Or just learn to hide your ableism better. Victoria enrolled in the program. So did my parents. 3 months later, Victoria called. Diana, I finished the course. Can I see you? We met at a fully accessible cafe, her choice, which I noted. I've been learning about spinal cord injuries, chronic pain, and invisible disabilities, she said. And I'm horrified at everything I said to you. Good, I said. You should be. I talked to Dr. Reynolds too, Victoria continued. She said you approved Riverside's funding renewal for another year. Despite everything. I approved it because Riverside met all state standards, I said. My personal feelings about you don't affect my professional decisions. That's more grace than I deserve, Victoria said quietly. Yes, I agreed. It is. I'm implementing new disability accommodation protocols at Riverside, she said. I want you to review them. Professionally. Tell me what we're doing wrong. I studied her. Why? Because I work in patient services and I've been servicing patients with disabilities terribly, she said. Your research showed me that. The hospital board agreed. We want to do better. Over the next 6 months, Victoria proved she meant it. She brought me in as a consultant, paid, professional, no family favors. She implemented my recommendations. She attended disability advocacy conferences. My parents struggled more. They attended the education program but kept slipping into old patterns. You just seem so capable, my mother said during one difficult lunch. It's hard to remember you're disabled. I am capable, I said patiently. And I'm disabled. Those aren't contradictory. I know that now, she said. Intellectually. But emotionally it's hard to reconcile. That's your problem to solve, I said gently but firmly. Not mine. My father was more direct. I hate that I hurt you. I hate that I didn't see what you'd accomplished. I hate that it took public humiliation for me to understand. Me too, I said. Can you forgive me? He asked. I'm working on it, I said honestly. But Dad, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending the last 4 years didn't happen. I know, he said. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. A year after the reunion, Dr. Reynolds invited me to speak at Riverside Medical Center's annual staff training. They need to hear from you, she said. About disability, about accommodation, about the hospital's responsibility to do better. I accepted. Victoria introduced me. This is Dr. Diana Morrison. She's one of the most influential healthcare policy experts in our state. He's also my sister. And I've learned more from her in the past year than in my entire career. I gave a speech about living with disability, working with disability, and the importance of never assuming someone's capabilities based on their assistive devices. 500 Riverside staff attended. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Afterward, Victoria hugged me carefully. She'd learned to ask before touching my wheelchair. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For not giving up on me," she said. "Even when I deserved it." "You're my sister," I said. "I wanted you to do better." "I am doing better," she said. "Thanks to you." 2 years after the reunion, the State Healthcare Funding Authority promoted me. Deputy Director of Regional Healthcare Policy. Salary, $198,000. I gave the keynote address at the State Healthcare Administration Conference. 1,000 attendees. My family sat in the second row. All of them. When I finished my speech about healthcare equity, disability accommodation, and the importance of judging people by their contributions rather than their limitations, they stood and applauded with everyone else. Victoria approached after, her eyes red. "I'm so proud of you, Dee," she said. "I should have said that 4 years ago." "You're saying it now," I replied. "That's what matters." My father hugged me. "Your mother and I have been working on something." "What's that?" "A foundation," he said. "For spinal cord injury research and disability advocacy. We've raised $50,000 so far. We're naming it after you." I stared at him. "You're what?" "We can't take back the past 4 years," my mother said, appearing beside him. "But we can try to help others avoid the ignorance we showed you." It wasn't perfect redemption. 4 years of pain doesn't erase easily. But it was real effort. Real change. Real understanding. And sometimes that's enough. 3 years later, I published my second book, Beyond Accommodation: Disability as Professional Asset in Healthcare Leadership. It became required reading in healthcare administration programs across 12 states. Victoria wrote the foreword. "My sister taught me that disability doesn't diminish capability. Ignorance does. This book should be required reading for everyone in healthcare, and everyone in families with disabled members. I wish I'd had it 4 years ago. It would have saved us both considerable pain." Dr. Reynolds launched a national initiative on disability inclusion in hospital leadership, using my research as the framework. My parents' foundation funded 3 researchers working on spinal cord injury treatments. Me. I kept working. 50 hours a week from my adaptive workstation, in my wheelchair when needed and with my cane when possible. I controlled $340 million in annual healthcare funding. I shaped policy that affected 4 million patients. I influenced healthcare leadership across 17 states. Not despite my disability. Not even in spite of it. Just as myself. Dr. Diana Morrison. Disabled. Brilliant. Powerful. Undeniable. And finally seen for exactly who I was.